Bengals trade for Khalil Herbert. I'll talk about this coming up next on AFC North Talk.
We gon' run it, hit the field, blast off, watch them all fall. This is AFC North Talk. Got me hype, it's about to be a touchdown. Got the Ravens, Steelers, Bengals, and the Browns. Are you listening? It's time to get it hype. Tune in when the season poppin'. Yeah, we going live. Ay, knock 'em out. Ay, first down, going hard. Yes, indeed. AFC North Talk. Let's go. Ay, AFC North Talk.
Welcome on in to the Bengals Corner. I'm Ace Boogie, a.k.a. New Stripe City, and I'm here to talk about the Bengals willing and dealing for the first time in 50 years for a seventh-round draft pick in exchange for Bears running back Khalil Herbert. Now, I know what you're saying. This isn't probably the deal that you really expected the Bengals to make. A lot of people yesterday expected the Bengals to make a move on the defensive line after Diana Rossini kind of talked about, hey, the Bengals are in on defensive line. That's probably likely where they're going. They didn't end up making that move. They end up making this move early in the day. They end up getting Khalil Herbert. Now, the reason behind that is let's rewind all the way back to the offseason. Bengals made the decision to move on from Joe Mixon, felt he wasn't a fit for the offense. They felt like they were paying too much. So what they ended up doing is saying, hey, let's part ways with Joe Mixon. They ended up switching that into, hey, let's trade Joe Mixon to the Texans, where the Texans not only extended Joe Mixon, that's neither here nor there. They traded and got their seventh-round pick back. Now, Bengals end up going out and getting Zach Moss. They thought that he was a better fit. They thought he would bring the pass blocking element to the run game to pair with Chase Brown. Only thing is, didn't quite work out. Chase Brown was good. Zach Moss, outside of a few games, wasn't really good. Unfortunately, Zach Moss in the last game, or the game before last, ends up injuring his neck. It seems like Zach Moss is done for the season. He's currently looking for another specialist to see if there's still a chance to allow him to play. But right now, Zach Moss is shelved. So that put the Bengals in a position to where Travion Williams was their backup, and then they also had, a practice squad running back that they were able to bring up. They were pretty much thin at the position. So that's where this trade came from. They needed to replace Zach Moss. They needed to add some NFL talent there. But I like what they did with this because Khalil Herbert, he's a little bit more of a smaller running back, but he does produce at an explosive level. And I think that he's a great fit for what the Bengals want to do, especially from a run game perspective, especially from a passing game perspective. He's not really a great pass protector, but he does provide, just like Chase Brown, those explosive plays that you kind of look for. So looking over some of his stats, he's never been the primary running back. He's always kind of been a secondary running back. So you look back at his career, he started his first year in 2021, 17 games, 103 carries, 433 yards, 2 touchdowns. His longest one was 29 yards. Really came onto the scene his second year. In only 13 games, he had 129 carries, 731 yards, 4 touchdowns, had a long run of 63 yards. So that's displaying that home run hitting availability, 5.7 yards per carry. Easily his best season thus far. Followed that up in 2023, 12 games, 132 carries, 611 yards. That was good for 4.6 yards per carry. 2 touchdowns, a long run of 38 yards. So he's had a career average of 4.8 yards per carry, 9 touchdowns in limited fashion. No fumbles, none of them, no fumbles at all. So that's something that the Bengals are looking for, ball security. He's going to be a guy that brings a lot. Now, in the passing game, he is able to do some things in the passing game. I've seen people kind of criticize him in the passing game. He's a guy that had 14 receptions on 16 targets for 96 yards. He's gotten 6 first downs in terms of his catching ability and getting those first downs in 2021. Then you look at 2022, he ends up getting only 57 yards, but he did get a rushing or a receiving touchdown as well. And then after that, his best year was 2023. Looks like he had 20 receptions on 31 targets, 134 yards, and a touchdown. So this is a guy that can make plays in the passing game as well. Now, his run blocking or his pass blocking, as I said, it isn't amazing, but he is a guy that can catch screens. He can, do things as a powerful runner, keep good balance on his feet, be explosive, and that's what the Bengals are going to need from him. And I think that the Bengals making this move makes a lot of sense because as it stands right now, they just don't have a running back room that you can really count on from a durability standpoint, from a standpoint of, hey, this is a legit guy that we have in here. Now you have somebody in there with legitimate NFL experience to pair alongside Chase Brown. And I think that they would make a nice duo. Now, there are rumors that the Bengals could be bringing in Leonard Fournette as well to try out, work out for them just so they can kick tires on him. He's more of a power running back. Khalil Herbert is more of a shiftier, fast, explosive running back, similar to what they have in Chase Brown. But I would argue that the Khalil Herbert move and Chase Brown actually fit the Bengals, what they want to do offensively, better. I think scheme-wise, they're better. I think from a skill set-wise, they're better. And what they're going to be able to do in this offense, I think Khalil Herbert is going to be able to offer something that Chase Brown has that's similar, but you get 2 guys that are kind of built similarly, can do some of the same things and be factors, especially after this game where Chase Brown was able to have an explosive game, 127 yards on the ground, but he cannot take the full burden of just being the bell cow. So Bengals are able to get Khalil Herbert here. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people thought Bengals would be in on Azeez Ojulari. Bengals thought that they would be in on Jeffrey Simmons and some of these things. I think that they were, as Diana Rossini pointed out, looking for a defensive tackle. Did they probably call on Jeffrey Simmons? I haven't checked with my sources, but I would suppose that they did. At least maybe Sebastian Day over there as well, just to see what they were doing there. Now, that's interesting because I feel like the Bengals have gotten better at defensive tackle just because now you finally have Sheldon Rankins back, who honestly has been, in my opinion, not the greatest free agent signing. He's been extremely underwhelming, but you do now have McKinley Jackson back as your nose tackle. You do now have B.J. Hill that was playing at a pretty decent level. Now, he did sustain a rib injury. I think he's expected to play as it stands Thursday night. Chris Jenkins was able to get his first sack. So, you're not really at a dire need at the defensive tackle position. So I thought it was interesting that they were looking at those guys. And I think if they were looking at those guys, I think they are looking at a guy like a Jeffrey Simmons to see if he is available because they have the Callahan connection there if they were going to be on a fire sale over there. But clearly they're not trading Jeffrey Simmons. But again, it likely might be Sebastian Day as well that they were looking at over there. That's probably a little bit more realistic. So I'm wondering why they were looking over there. And then some people talked about them being in the market for a corner. Be interesting to figure out which ones that they were. Didn't seem like they were in on the Marshawn Lattimore move there. So I don't know if they were actually in on that. I did ask around about Max Crosby. From what I heard, Max Crosby was not available whatsoever. And I guess he couldn't fight his way up out of there, but they just knew that Max Crosby was not going to be available, which makes sense. You talk about a top 100 NFL player when it comes to that. So, the Bengals in this one ended up sticking and making their sole move on offense. Will they regret that? I tend to think so because right now, if you're going just solely based off of the defense's performance against the Raiders, I think that's a little fool's goldish. And I think right now they actually need some help in the cornerback room. I think they do need some more help on the edge room. I think Chase Young was a guy that they could have brought in to try to do something, but they didn't end up doing that. So as it stands, Khalil Herbert was a move that they made. They made a move. Is this enough for the rest of the season? I don't know if it is on the defensive side. Now, I've also heard that Xavier Howard is supposed to work out for the Bengals as well. So maybe they signed him to the corner room. Looks like Quentin Jefferson that the Browns just cut ended up signing with the Bills today. So they're not going to be able to get Quentin Jefferson in there. So I think as it stands now, it was a solid day for the Bengals in terms of making this Khalil Herbert trade, but you kind of felt like you desired a little bit more. Like maybe if they were able to get a corner or a D tackle or maybe one of those edge rushers, I think you'd feel better about it. Now you're kind of stuck with Trey Hendrickson, Miles Murphy, Joseph Osai, and Sam Hubbard, and you have to hope that continues to flourish and get better. Whereas the supporting cast just for Trey Hendrickson has not been enough. So we'll see if Miles Murphy is able to fulfill that role, especially if they give him more snaps. We'll see that. In the secondary, I think Jordan Battle is going to do just fine. I think you'll start to see an uptick there from him in terms of snaps. At corner, though, scares me because CTB, DJ Turner, I think they are solid. Mike Hilton is a stud. But after that, if there's any kind of injuries there, you're talking about DJ Ivy and Josh Newton, guys that don't have much experience possibly being up. So cornerback scares me a little bit. If they do go out and get Xavier Howard, it will make me feel a lot better. And I think from a defensive line perspective, we just have to see what ends up happening. So we'll get a lot of these answers here as we turn to Thursday. But we'll see. And I also thought that another underrated need, especially with Eric All going out, was tight end, a tight end that can block and catch the ball. So we'll see what happens here as we shift to Thursday night. Obviously, the Bengals still have Tanner Hudson, so maybe they feel like they'll be good there. We'll see what it is. But, yeah, I think overall, if I'm grading this move for the Bengals, I'm going to probably give it a B+, maybe A-, just because they were able to go out there and get a quality running back in Khalil Herbert and realize that they made a mistake, letting Joe Mixon go, signing Zach Moss, and I think that they're trying to rectify that decision, and to do it for a 7th-round pick is a no-brainer. So shout out to the Bengals for being somewhat aggressive here on a day of free agency. However, some of the other teams made some more moves. Once again, this is Bengals Corner. I'm Ace Boogie. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to AFC North Talk. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, like button, and leave me a comment in the comment section. Who dat?